Get higher, baby. Get higher, baby. Get higher, girl. Hey.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Hopefully, welcome back to Knights of the Pages Library. If this is your first episode, I'm here with my brother, Ryan. How are you doing, Ryan?
Oh, not so bad.
Well, today, so what we do here on Knights of the Pages Library, just this happens to be your first episode for some reason, we review audiobooks. And today, the book that we are looking at is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer
Jeff
and,
Vandermeer. I almost said
and
Jim.
narrated by Carolyn McCormick.
Yeah, so I'm gonna touch on this real quick. Actually, no, we'll just do the rest of the stuff. I'll get to this in a minute.
So right now we're gonna plug our stuff a little bit because nobody's emailing us and it's making me mad. So our email is kotpl.pod@gmail.com. You can also tweet at us if you want to at Twitter at Knights of the Pages Library. You can also watch the YouTube videos that Ryan works really hard on to make, actually, at Knights of the Pages Library. And you can check out our Facebook page at Knights of the Pages Library. Now, what were you gonna say, Ryan?
Oh, I just this Carolyn McCormick. I'm pretty sure she also does the Hunger Games.
Oh, yeah, I think she does. And
yeah,
I want to talk about her more a little bit later.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a minute. I just this time around, I think I knew it the first time I listened to it, but this time around again, I was like, oh yeah, that's this lady.
So Annihilation, when was this published?
This is also, we'll just point this out real quick. Annihilation is part of a trilogy called the Southern Reach Trilogy.
And I've never actually listened to just Annihilation by itself. I usually listen to all three of them.
Yeah, because the one we download from Audible is called Area X, and it has all three of the trilogy in one book, basically.
And I want to say it's the price of a regular book, right? So it's $38 for Area X, and Annihilation is $17.47.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you might as well just get Area X because Area X is 3 books in one. So.
And I think you can use a token, right, to get Area X itself.
Yes.
Or whatever Audible fucking Star Coin, whatever it's called.
Yeah, Area X is just the whole trilogy smashed into one. The entire trilogy in Area X is 26 hours, but this book we're taking a look at is only going to be about 6 hours long.
Yeah, it's actually kind of relatively short, I would say.
Yeah, that actually is relatively short for a book we do. I mean, again, though, this is the way they laid it out in the Area X trilogy, I think, is the way it's meant to be listened to. Is just listen to all 3 books in a row.
I'm gonna be real. I'm gonna cut the crap. I'm gonna go straight to it. Like the first time I listened to this, I literally could not stop until I listened to all 3 of them.
Right.
So
yeah, easier just to go through all 3.
Take that as you will. So this book is, it's like you're reading a journal that the biologist has written. I don't really want to talk too much about the book yet, but just that's basically the whole setup. Is that it's like you're reading her journal that she's taking, so it's like her thoughts about everything.
Yeah, the genre of this is definitely sci-fi. So
right, and I would say sci-fi horror, but everybody else who's ever listened to this is like, it's not scary. I'm like, okay, fine, it's not horror then.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a psychological thing, definitely. And I think we'll get into that a little bit more once we break the spoiler wall. But this one is, we'll just say at its core, it's a sci-fi novel. So for anybody interested in that kind of stuff, this is a heavy sci-fi novel. I'm going to go ahead and say, if this is easy listening or easy to follow, this is not for me. This, to me,
heck no.
This is not an easy one to follow. If you catch yourself daydreaming a lot, or maybe trying to do something else while you listen to this, if you miss between a sentence and a paragraph of dialogue, you might be lost for the rest of the story. So that's I think a pretty fair warning as to how difficult this one is to follow.
it's just there's a lot of layers to things that are happening that are said.
Sure.
And I don't know if anybody's listened to our episode about Solaris, but I would say this is kind of the same way, that you really need to pay attention to like the words that they use in each kind of situation to really understand what's happening.
Right.
And Ryan's totally on the money. You cannot daydream. I know when I listen to this book, I just like to stare out the window and listen to it and not do anything else, so I can really pay attention to each thing that is happening.
Yeah, and this might be one of those few books that you kind of just need to be listening to it. I mean, even though I listen while I drive, I kind of found myself struggling to follow along with this. And I've listened to this before. This is the second time I've listened to this. And I still found myself struggling to keep up with some details. And I was really trying this time around to force myself to pay attention. This episode brought to you by Bacardi Oakart. Not really, just kidding. We don't have any fucking sponsors.
Not yet.
But...
Audible, hit us up.
Yes, please. Anybody at Audible, if you're interested. We're
trying
to do you guys a favor.
I'm going to go into the recommendations, and you can say your thing, but I think this is one of my all-time favorite books, but I would say it's not for most people.
It's not for the faint of heart.
You got to go in and you got to like take notes. I feel like almost, I'm not kidding though. Like it is, I think it's written really eloquently, and it might be a better, like if any of this sounds interesting to you, it might be better to read it, because that way you can go over things like over and over again if you need to understand what's happening better. Because I mean, what's the narrator's name? Carolyn Mccormick.
Carolyn McCormick.
She does a pretty good job, but I think she's awful monotone, and so it's hard to tell when things are important and when they aren't.
Right.
Go ahead,
she does
Ryan.
an excellent job, by the way. I would say Carolyn McCormick for me.
Hang on, I want to talk about that more later.
Okay, we'll bring this back up a little bit, but I would say for me that she kind of does this one for me in terms of she is good, I would say, at reading the story.
I think she does an excellent job, and I'll talk about more about that later, but I think she if they had anybody else voice specifically Annihilation, I don't think it would work as well as it does.
Sure. I actually, it's funny that Bo says this is his favorite, because I do not like this book.
I kind of figured as much.
So, and I'm not even trying to say that to contrast with you. I put forth my best foot, especially the second time around, to really wrap my head around this one, and I just could not do it. And part of that I know is me. Part of that is the way it is written, because it's written from this biologist's point of view in her journal. It's also basically just thoughts coming from her head. And from what I gather, especially the second time around, this lady is not normal either.
Okay, we'll talk about that more.
Okay,
I feel like you shouldn't talk about it.
That's true. Yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, that's true. I'm going a little bit beyond the spoiler wall.
And
But
so
just for me, that's just going to be my bottom line, is that I don't recommend this one if you cannot, especially if you cannot pay attention while you're listening to it. It's not going to be worth your time or money. I promise you that. This is one you definitely have to dedicate yourself to. And even then, you might end up like me and still not quite grasping it.
And I think that's totally fair. I feel like this is it's kind of, the audience I think for this is pretty niche. And I feel like if you are somebody who likes like mysteries, then I think you will enjoy this.
Sure. That's a fair way to put it too, because while this is heavily sci-fi, especially in the first book in Annihilation, they do put a lot of mystery stuff on it. So yeah, that is a good point.
But I mean, I feel like I can't really recommend it, even though I love this book. I don't feel like I can recommend it though.
Well, and I mean, you can, I would say, just with the stipulations I put forward. We're giving everybody fair warning here that if you can't invest yourself in this one, it's not going to be worth your time. And that we're just talking about the first book here. Like I said, we're not talking about the trilogy all today. So and I don't want to spoil any more in the trilogy. I've only actually listened up through the second book, so
You
I
haven't
don't
even
even know the
finished
whole
it?
thing.
What?
No, I haven't even finished
I've
this.
listened to the whole thing all the way through like 5 times.
So I'm gonna go ahead and refer to you then as the expert on this one. But so I think there it is though for everybody. It's almost our buyer beware on this one. This is the first
Yeah.
one we've really had that on, and I'm not even saying this is not a good book. I'm not even trying. This is not like Ready Player One. I'm not saying that this has a bad premise, that it was written poorly or any of that stuff. For me, this is a difficult one to follow. So this is a kind of ramps your attention span up to get to this one.
Yep. So, I mean, do you want to go into spoilers now?
Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and break the spoiler wall. So we're just gonna go ahead and kind of banter back and forth about the story.
I want to give just one more heads up. If you think this sounds interesting to you, you have to stop listening to the podcast. You can't keep going and then go back to the book.
Uh-huh.
And then you're probably gonna be even more confused because you're like, what were they even talking about?
Yeah, that's true. But definitely go listen to this one. If you want to go listen to this one, definitely go listen to it and then come back and listen to our
getting your
discussion.
magnifying glass out and your corncob pipe and your hat. Listen to this.
Sure.
All right, so let's go spoilers now.
Yeah, so
all holds are off.
We'll talk. We're just gonna kind of banter back and forth about the story a little bit. So this one kind of it drops you right into the action. So we open up in first person from the biologist's point of view, and they are just entering this Area X, quote unquote, that we know absolutely nothing about, other than might be the title of the trilogy purchased.
And the biologist takes very detailed notes, apparently.
Yeah.
Because she mentions like everything.
And that's kind of another thing I didn't really enjoy about this one, especially the second time around. Normally, like, I've seen books that are kind of written in this style where it's like somebody's journal, like a found journal type thing. And that's all well and good. I think that is a good way to get a story across. I think it's very cool. This one, to me, for being just a journal, is almost too detailed, I think.
But I think that is part of because I mean we'll get into it a little bit more. So she's part of, are they the 12th expedition to go into the Southern Reach, which is like this area that's surrounded by this like invisible barrier.
Well, it's Area X, right?
Right.
Area X is where they go. The Southern Reach is where
Area X.
Yeah, the Southern Reach is where this kind of takes place, where Area X is. And like Bo's saying, it's this area of kind of like jungle that's kind of on the shoreline.
Well, it has a lot of transition zones, right? It's really weird. There's a lot of life in this really small place that shouldn't be there. Because there's like lots of different biomes, I guess is the way to think about it.
Well, it's almost like I kind of picture it as like a tropical island almost, because they come in the forest, but it's almost like foresty, swampy. And then they go into like a rainforest, jungle, and then almost right away, or not right away, but a little bit further on is like a beach, like an ocean beach with mountains also off to one side. Right. Like it is an entire world, minus like a desert, I think, but
and like ice.
Sure. But it's all like smashed into this one small area surrounded by this like invisible barrier.
And it's absolutely pristine on the inside. Like it's soup. Everything is like looks like completely undisturbed by humans forever, which would like it's not possible for that to be like that. I mean, like the biologist kind of gets into it a little bit, but they're like used to be people that lived here like not that long ago.
Mm. Yeah, so we don't get a whole lot of feedback as to what they're doing early on in the story. We just know that there's a biologist, a psychologist, a surveyor, and
anthropologist.
An anthropologist, thank you.
And they are a special team, supposedly. Yeah, that's what Ryan exactly said. So they're like a special team because they're testing out different parameters for Area X, and so they're sending all women this time.
Right.
And the biologist's husband actually was part of the expedition before her that was all men.
Right.
But we'll talk about him a little bit later because he kind of plays into it.
Yeah, and so basically what's going on is this area kind of appeared to it sort of just started to like grow, right? Is kind of how they or no, sorry, it just appeared the area. The growth thing kind of comes in a little bit later.
Yeah, so like the biologist talks about because she gives you a little bit of the history that she knows about Area X, which isn't very much. But
Right.
like this area on the Southern Reach, all of a sudden one day, like this barrier went up and like boats were cut in half and like nothing can go through this barrier. If it like touches the barrier, it just disappears.
That's right. They don't explain until the second book how they get through it, right?
Yeah. And that's like the first thing the biologist talks about is like that they went through like a breach in the portal in Area X's like surrounding, I don't know, I think about it like a force field.
Sure.
And she's like, how did we get across that? And she asks the psychologist, and the psychologist is like, it's none of your concern.
Yeah, and we kind of get a little bit of insight here because the psychologist is specifically with their group to hypnotize them to bring them through this breach in
Right.
the surrounding area.
And it plays into a little more than that, but it's kind of, I like the way that you find out about all this stuff.
Yeah, it's a very interesting way that they kind of that they kind of bring it all up. It's very slow the way they bring it up.
Yeah, it is.
And I'm not even saying that in a bad way. I almost prefer that to if we had because the alternative would have been like prologue.
Yeah.
In this year, the anomaly happened. Like, and you don't have to do that. You don't have to explain everything to your listener immediately. So I thought they did a pretty good job of that, of stretching the information out over the whole story.
Well, yeah, and to me, like right away when she's like talking about like how weird they are, like it just feels wrong to be there, right? Like, it just
Yeah.
doesn't feel right, and like that immediately grabbed me. And one thing I love about this book too, which is kind of a theme I don't think is played with enough, is that like that humans are running into something that they have no knowledge of at all. Like they don't even
Mhm.
know how to study this thing.
Well, and that's why you liked Solaris so much,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, because Solaris is the same kind of premise, is that we as humans think we know everything. So when we're faced with something that all of our best minds can't get together and solve, it just we just start throwing stuff at it without a plan. It seems like without any idea of what we're doing, we're just gonna try some stuff.
And I think another important thing to mention is that all their equipment they brought with them is like old. It's not like top of the line stuff.
Yeah, so they have some weapons and stuff, and they're all. I basically just kind of picture, not even like modern day today pistols and stuff. I'm picturing stuff from like maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago, if not older.
And this
World
doesn't
War
take
II.
place like in the future. It's kind of like basically like right now, I would assume.
Yeah, because I mean, and we're like I said, I'm trying to stick to only what we know in the first one.
Me too, which is really hard.
It is going to be kind of hard. We'll try not to do too many spoilers on any of the other two. But yeah, we find out this is not like far in the future. This like takes time or takes place when he wrote this, which I think it was in like what is it, 2014 or something like that.
And I mean, so immediately like they go into Area X, things are kind of weird, and like the team, they're not like friends. They're like, and they're supposed to keep their journals secret, so nobody knows whatever anybody else is writing about,
Right.
because they want everybody to have like unique observations, right?
Yeah, and they want it's almost like when they pull people to give like a testimony or something, they immediately separate you and want you to write your own stuff down without talking to each other because they want each person's individual experience. They don't want to know what you learned together or what you conspired about together. They want to know individually what you found out.
Right. And so pretty much it's like really right in the beginning, they find this like sort of, it looks like a tunnel that like goes straight down into the ground, and it's not on any of their maps or anything.
Right. The
Which I don't-
biologist refers to it as the tower.
Right. But it like the way to think about it though, because when I first listened to it, I was like, I thought it went up, just because she kept saying tower.
Yeah.
but it goes straight down into the ground, and it has like a spiraling staircase that goes down and down and down and down.
Yep.
And so obviously they're there to check, they're there to investigate, so they all go down there, and the biologist goes first, and she notices there's like writing on the walls, but there's like this living organism that's growing from the writing, and she like goes to investigate it, and it like pops, and she like ingests some of it in her.
Yeah, like puts off a bunch of spores, right? She breathes
Right.
them in.
And almost immediately like weird stuff starts happening to the biologist, and this is when you know that like there's something a little wrong with the hypnosis, because I can't remember what she says, but the psychologist says something to the biologist, and she doesn't react the way she's supposed to, and so like the psychologist knows that something is up.
Well, and a little bit later into it, the psychologist says a couple words that actually put the other two, the anthropologist and the surveyor, it like puts them in like a weird state of mind, and the biologist has to just play along. She has to act like
because she wants
it
to
worked.
pretend.
Yeah, she has to act like it worked on her, because she's immediately, once she gets exposed to this spore, she's scared now that they're like, oh man, I'm compromised. They're just gonna send me away or something like that.
And she wants nothing more than to investigate Area X. Like that's what I think that's like her whole motivation, is that she just wants to investigate Area X.
Yeah, this is where it kind of loses me a little bit too, is because this is kind of what I meant in the beginning, is she's like weird, like the biologist. And by the way, we keep saying that, the biologist, because you do not learn her name.
No,
that's what
you don't.
And they did that on purpose, because the whole team, excuse me, is the whole team is not supposed to know each other's names, because they feel like that makes it too personal. So they just refer to each other by their profession, biologist, surveyor, what have you. So that's why we're just going to continue to refer to her as that, is because that's all we know of her.
And this is what I want to bring up Carolyn McCormick again, because I think she does a really good job of like portraying the biologist. Like reading her, I think she does a really good job.
I think she does an amazing job as well. And I think, like I said before, she's really kind of what keeps this, like, even can keep me listening to this one, because even though the story of it interests me, but just how lost I get in some of the details, it loses me enough to where I probably could stop listening to it. And she definitely keeps me listening, because Carolyn McCormick is very good at this.
And you know, you want to know the thing? I looked at some reviews for this book just out of before we, and people are all like, the reviews that aren't very high are like, Carolyn McCormick sucks. She's like the worst. She's the worst. Yes, and I'm like, wow. Oh, did you listen to the same thing I did?
Yeah, I don't agree with that at all. No, I'll agree with what you said. I think she's a bit monotone and she's a bit flat.
But I think that's like, to me, that like is the biologist though. Like I think she's doing a really good job of portraying the character.
Yeah, that's just it though, is the way she does it with staying very monotone and flat, I think is the biologist. That's just it. Because that's like her personality even. She's very flat. She even says that so much of herself, that she doesn't want to get, the only reason, like we find out a little bit later, you know, she was married and whatnot. And the only reason we find out she did like get married and stuff is because she felt like that's what she had to do to fit in with like society.
And I think the little snippets she gives of her life are really good. Like I like that, because you get to know the more about the character, because she is actually really important to this whole thing,
to the whole trilogy, right?
Yeah. And so basically, right, she gets infected with what she ends up calling the brightness, and that's like the only way she can describe it. It just feels like she has more light.
Yeah. Okay.
And she gets like kind of superhuman abilities a little bit, but like almost immediately, right, like the group starts to break down, because they realize that they've been lied to, like that they were going there to investigate the tower, not what they were told beforehand. And so the whole, like, all the group is kind of like, they're like after each other. And then the next morning, right, the psychologist is just gone.
The psychologist and the anthropologist is gone.
Oh yeah, you're right. Oh shit, I forgot about this part.
Or actually, the anthropologist, she's gone first. She's gone first, right?
Right, yeah, the anthropologist is just gone. She's gone, and supposedly what happened to her is she went down into the tower, right, and died. She killed herself. That's what the psychologist said.
Yeah, the psychologist kind of acts like she doesn't know what happened, right?
Right, but she's clearly injured, right? She has like blood on her boots, and she's like acting kind of super strange.
Yeah, the psychologist is right.
Yeah, and then she just disappears the next day, I think.
Yeah.
And so then that just leaves the surveyor and the biologist together.
And the
And
surveyor, I just picture as like this, and I'm not trying to offend anybody. This is just me building it in my head, but I just kind of picture this just broad-chested butch girl, because she's the one who has like the assault rifle. I picture her with just almost like a straight buzz cut haircut, like
Right.
just she's no nonsense. Like she is the one through all of this that the biologist is kind of like scared of her solely because of how like intimidating she is.
So actually, I think before this, the biologist has taken samples of the stuff she found on the wall, right? And she looks at it, but it looks completely normal. It looks like normal cells, but she gets the feeling when she looks away, it changes.
Yeah.
Which like I don't know how else to articulate that, but like obviously something. It's like everything is like being mimicked to look normal, but it's not.
Yeah, and that also kind of goes along with a little bit earlier in the story. They run across like this wild boar
Oh, right.
who was gonna like attack them, and then I didn't really like this. It's this is where I kind of feel like the book sort of struggles with descriptions of things. This thing basically like charges at them, and then it like veers off the path, and then it's like gone. Which, knowing now what I know, obviously I know what's going on, but I just feel like it was kind of described kind of poorly. As well as like the beast they keep talking about, like in the swamps a little bit later.
Right. So every time they sleep, they hear this thing just like yowling at the top of its lungs every night.
Yeah, and I don't like that. I'm all for stories that don't explain everything to you. I just feel like that particular part was not done very well, but that's neither here nor there. I'm just kind of going off on that one.
So to me, like when the psychologist is gone, this is when the story like really picks up, because like the surveyor knows, like she can just tell that something is wrong with the biologist, and so they like split up because she doesn't trust her anymore. But the only really directions that they've been given to in like if anything were to happen in the breach, you should go to the lighthouse. And so the biologist like makes her way there. I mean, she sees lots of weird stuff on the way there, but it's hard to describe. Like I don't know how to talk about it if you weren't listening to it, because I can't put it as well as he does.
That's kind of what I mean, though, is that the descriptions, while good, that's kind of another thing to kind of give people a warning about, is these descriptions, since they're from the biologist's point of view, these are going to be very articulate words, big words.
Big words.
Yeah, so that's kind of where someone that's a dummy like me starts falling behind, because I'm like, well, wait a minute, what does that word even mean? Does that mean it was big, it was bright, it was colorful? Like, what does that mean? So I start getting lost in some of those descriptions, and that's kind of also where the book falls short for me a little bit. And that's more of a personal thing. That's more just my fault, not the book's fault.
So the biologist makes it to the lighthouse, and she goes in the lighthouse and she finds just like this stack of everybody who's ever been into Area X's journals over time. And this is where
she mentions,
okay,
she's like, because they're supposed to be the quote unquote 12th expedition, and she's like, there are way more journals than worth of 12 expeditions here.
Right. And but then she talks about like what happened to her husband's expedition. Like all the people just showed up randomly one day, and then they all died of like horribly malignant cancers.
Yeah. So, and when you say showed up, they showed up back at home. Like,
yeah,
like they came back home out of Area X after they had been there. They came home to their loved ones, and then every single one of them, which there was I think 6 of them, they all died right around the same time after that of cancer.
And I mean, she talks about a little bit like with when her husband came home, but it was like he was empty. Like it was the same. It was like the same body, but like there was nothing left in him at all.
Right. Right.
And when they asked them about their time in Area X, they would give like really vague answers. Like how was it in Area X? And they would be like, oh, it was good. Like
Right.
did anything happen? And be like, no, nothing of note,
Mm-hmm.
which is strange. But so then she obviously the first thing she does, she digs through the journals and finds her husband's journal. And then so he basically they went through like the same experience as her, just a little different. But it does give you a lot of background on like the limitations and stuff of Area X. Because her husband, they like tried to hike out and leave. So they went like 9 days up the beach, and then they thought they must have gotten lost, and they come back, but it only takes them 4 days to come back.
Yeah.
So obviously there's lots of strange things kind of going on here.
Right. Yeah. It kind of distorts time and space in a way, I guess.
Yeah, I don't want to get into it because like this book is gonna leave you with a lot of questions. It's
Sure.
not really answering a lot of them yet. Which
No.
it's kind of part of it though, because the biologist doesn't really know a whole lot.
Yeah.
And she gives you like the background she knows about Area X, and it's not very much. They don't really tell the people going in anything.
Right.
And I think that's when she notices, right, that there's like busted glass out of the top of the lighthouse.
Yeah. Well, in the lighthouse itself, along with all the stacked journals and stuff, there's like furniture is all like basically it's like ransacked. The whole thing is like ransacked.
No, it's like it's fortified, I thought.
Yeah, that's
It's
kind of
like
what I mean.
there was like sandbags and everything's like and it's like a weapons cache.
Yeah, and the tables are like pushed over like up against
Mhm.
the door and stuff. But yeah, then she notices there's like broken glass out the top of the lighthouse.
And she like looks down and it's like psychologist is on the beach and it looks like she just fell out the top of the lighthouse.
Or jumped.
Or jumped, you're right. Or was pushed.
Or was pushed.
We don't really get to know.
Right.
And so she goes and sees the psychologist, and the psychologist has like this nasty fungus growing out of her. That's like
she has a wound, right? Like on her
Right.
shoulder or something,
Yeah.
or an arm.
Yeah, so and then the biologist tries to question her, but then she doesn't really give her anything. She just gives her like questions with questions. And then she
Right.
dies and she looks in her journal, and in her only thing in the psychologist's journal is this list of hypnotist commands for each person that
Mhm.
they have, which was crazy. Oh, and one of the things I love about this, when she's coming up, the psychologist just starts screaming annihilation. She's just screaming it at the top of her lungs as she's watching
Yeah.
her approach.
Right.
And then so when she looks in the journal, annihilation is the command to kill yourself.
Yeah. Yep.
Which that part to me was like, whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah, but nothing's working on the biologist now because whatever spores
The
she was
brightness,
introduced
right?
to. Yeah.
And the psychologist even mentions that like I can tell that you're different, like you're brighter than before.
Yeah.
And so then the biologist decides she has to see what's at the bottom of the tower. She doesn't care. She just has to know. And so she goes back, and on her way back, the surveyor like blasts her.
Yeah, okay, that's right. That is when it happens. Yeah, as she's heading back, yeah, the surveyor shoots her like twice or something.
Which this is a really interesting way that it's written, I think. So like, yeah, the surveyor shoots her, but then because of the brightness, she's able to overpower her. But then she goes back and she's like, actually, I knew the shot was coming. I knew exactly what to do. Like the brightness had basically taken care of her.
Mm-hmm.
And she heals super fast because she got hurt, but she's like healed instantly. So she's like basically becoming something totally different.
Right.
And then she goes back into the tower, and that's when you get to me, like every time I listen to it, the way I picture the crawler is different.
Yeah, so this is where she goes down, right, and finds the quote unquote crawler, which we should mention too. I think we forgot about this. They found the anthropologist down a few floors in the tower. Right. She's like dead, but she had some samples off of this quote unquote crawler that the biologist refers to, and that's what they're pretty sure is putting their writing on the walls.
Mm-hmm. And when they got too close to the crawler, it killed the anthropologist, and it damaged the psychologist.
Yeah, that's where she got her wound from. That's now festering with this like life, basically.
And the part that's like building up to when she gets to see the crawler, I love that part. I really like that because the anticipation the first time I was like, what is it? What is it? I have to know.
See, and I like that part too. I'm not a big fan of the way that they portrayed it, and I understand what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be like so mind-boggling that she doesn't have a grasp on it. She can't figure out what it is.
Right. It's like so foreign to anything that we've ever dealt with.
And I kind of like that. It felt almost like the writer was trying to like channel his inner H.P. Lovecraft.
Kind of.
It just didn't come across for me. I just was disappointed in the reveal of this creature.
Yeah, so I don't even know how to describe it. It's like light and formless at the same time, but it looks like a man is like in the middle of it.
Yeah. Which is
the man is writing on the walls.
Right.
And then so after that, the biologist, she knows she can't leave Area X, so that's why we're happening to read her journal, right? Is because she left it in the lighthouse, and she goes to the island where supposedly her husband is.
Yeah, she heads for the island where her husband said he was going. Yeah,
and that's Annihilation.
Yeah, and that's really it. It ends that abruptly.
Which I think if this sounded interesting, you got to buy all three.
Sure, you definitely do yourself a favor if you want to listen to it. Just get Area X that includes all three. Don't just get them one at a time, in my opinion. Because if you like this one, you're gonna want to move on.
Well, and especially because this book is going to leave you with like 500 questions and like 2 answers.
Right.
And yeah, and even in the next books, it's when they're going to answer all these questions, but it's complicated in the way that they answer them.
Sure. And it doesn't get any easier listening.
The first time I listened to all 3 of them, I was like, wait, what? I don't get it still.
Right.
And I had to go back, which I think is a ding against this book, but the whole series.
And I would say I understand it a little bit better the second time around than I did the first time. The first time I was absolutely just like, huh? I don't get it at all. Definitely the second time around, I got a little bit more of it and I understood it a little bit better. Just be aware though, it's a hard one to follow. I mean, first or second time for me, this one's a hard one to follow.
Yep. And I don't know. You got anything else to say?
I just kind of some quick wrap up stuff. I was just scrolling through some of the audible.com reviews for this one. And a lot of people are saying the same things as us, that it is confusing, that it's kind of hard to follow. A lot of them are saying it's bad. The first one is bad. Just because they're comparing it to like Lost, the TV series, which is fine. That's a fine comparison. I think it's better than that, to be honest, just because we do have a described creature. We do get those things as to like what's kind of going on. Whereas in Lost, I only watched a few episodes of that, but you don't get any of that. Also, some people in the Audible reviews are saying that the narrator is bad. Like this one says that the narrator is awkward. I couldn't get into the book and stopped listening after an hour. The first narrator is halting, awkward, and doesn't feel like a real person. That, though, to me, describes the biologist perfectly.
Exactly. Like, that's why I feel like they didn't listen well enough.
So these little snippets we get into the background of the biologist's life, we go back to like when she was a kid and her family life kind of sucked, and the only thing she had going for her is like this house they moved into had this swimming pool that nobody was taking care of. So it was like overgrown and teeming with like frogs and bugs and all this stuff. And so she would just go out there and sit for hours and hours and just watch what was happening in this little ecosystem. Basically, what I kind of get from this is the biologist is almost like super high functioning autistic, to where she's an awkward person. Like, she doesn't know how to talk to other people. All she wants to interact with is nature. That's her thing. She doesn't want to interact with other people. She wants to interact with nature. So I think that the narrator did a fantastic job of portraying that to me.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think she does a good job. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think she does a good job of, especially because this is like a written journal. Like, I think she does a really good job of portraying, like, giving the biologist character through the way that it's read.
Sure, and people have to remember, because we try to point that out a lot when we do these, is like we point out if the narrator did a good job switching voices and stuff. Well, this narrator is not really switching voices that often. This is supposed to be the voice in this biologist's head for 90% of the story. I mean, we have some dialogue interactions with other characters. All those characters in this one happen to be women, though, so she's just voicing other women. And I think it works well in this book. Now, if we were bouncing back and forth to a lot of characters and she was trying to voice multiple characters in the same voice, I might have a little bit more of a problem with it. But as it goes, she's a perfect fit for this book, in my opinion.
I 100% agree. And I'm just looking at some of these reviews, and I feel like a lot of people don't like it. Don't like the whole series, actually.
Yeah, well, and I think that's kind of why I'm saying this, though, is it's hard to follow. And if you're not if you're not used to this kind of high fantasy type of science fiction, this is going to be hard to follow. We've said it a million times now, and I hate to keep beating a dead horse, but that is what this is. It's hard to follow. I know there's a good story underneath there. I really do. And that's the only reason I even finished the whole thing twice, because I did finish it the whole thing the first time too, because I was intrigued.
Well, and I have to say that Bronson Pinchot voices the second book in the series, and he's the same guy that does Hard Magic, and he's great.
Yeah, and he is excellent too. So yeah, that also goes strong for this series of books as well.
I would consider him one of the heaviest hitters when it comes to narrators.
Oh sure, yeah, he's on my like top 5 too. We'll have to do that when we get
top 5 narrators of all time.
When we get
number 1, Morgan Freeman.
There. Once we get pretty deep into this, maybe for like a 25th episode special or something, we could go over our favorites to this point. But yeah, so what I think we'll go ahead and wrap this one up there. Hopefully everybody got a little bit, like we said, we can't really get into this story too much because this one's it's too hard for us to put in words. I don't think we're on par with this Jeff Vandermeer guy to put this stuff into words.
No, he's way smarter than me.
Sure. So what are we gonna go over next time?
Next time we are taking a look at the Audible original Treasure Island, which it's supposed to be a turbo episode. It's 6 hours long, so who knows? It might be a little longer than that.
Yeah, we'll try to probably keep that one a little bit shorter, but it's actually a long book for a free book.
It's almost the same as Annihilation.
Sure.
And after that, we're doing Airborne, right? Who writes that?
Yeah, let's do Airborne. That's Kenneth Opel.
Oh, Kenneth Opel. Same guy that did This Dark Endeavor.
Yes, same guy. Yeah. So we'll be talking about that one in a couple weeks. And
hope to catch you guys at both of those.
Yes, definitely. And we're going to try, like we've been saying, the new Audible stuff. I haven't checked, but the new Audible originals and the lineup of free stories should be popping up soon for September. So we'll try to put that up to a poll on Facebook, Twitter, and all that stuff. So you guys,
so you guys can vote for what you want us to do.
Right. Let us know which 2 out of the probably 5 or 6 there are.
I think it's 6.
It's 6. Okay, so let us know which 2 out of the 6 everybody's most interested in, and those are the 2 that we will go ahead and download and review. And I think that'll keep us a little more honest too, because like I said, we're pretty like-minded in the stories we like. We like fantasy, sci-fi, and stuff like that. So those are going to be what we tend to review most often. So if we have a couple other people's opinion on it, we might be able to branch out a little bit more.
Yep. I totally agree that I feel like we're going to have to be forced out of our comfort zone at some point.
Sure. And I mean, there's a lot of There's a lot of books in our Audible library because our mom downloads most of them.
Oh,
So
yeah.
there's
Shout
a
out to
ton
you,
of
Mom, too, if you're listening to this.
yeah, definitely shout out to mom because she keeps that library stocked full of stuff for us to listen to. So
Pretty much. So, all right. Well, I think I'm good.
yeah, I'm good on that one.
I'll catch you guys next time.
Yeah.